And we are live at FMA discussion episode 151. We didn't encounter any kind of technical difficulties, so it's been kind of smooth riding from now. But I will be hosting instead of Dean. He has some matters to attend to, and Martin was supposed to join us, but I don't think I'm allowed to go. He can't speak, so it's just lonely me. I'm looking forward to this because I'm a geek of FMA, and Leslie Buck has been practicing for about I would say 3 decades now. Am I right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Your reputation precedes you, sir, because you have a very stellar rep. I, from what I've heard from other systems, not talking about just PTK, but from your interaction with people that practice other FMA systems, they're like, oh, he's a stand-up guy, very technical dude. Very kind of like it's kind of popular now, the Stoic philosophy. They always say that about you. You're like, he's stoic. He's a stoic guy. and so that's the reason why I was like, well, great. They can't do the interview. I'm ready for this. We got a list.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
So just let's get started. The first one is please give background to social. What? Oh, what the hell? Did I give you the right one? Did I give you the right list? I'm sorry.
Hey, Baste, how are you, man?
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna ask Baste some question probably last because there you go. I'm sorry, I did give you the wrong list, so I'm gonna send that to you. Give us the background on your martial arts, not just FMA, because I know you have like other arts, so put that in unison in combination with each other. So give us both the other martial art background and your FMA background in history.
Okay, gotcha. Well, it really started for me in high school. I was a wrestler, and although it's not technically a martial art, it got me in that world where I'm thinking of, something that's athletic, that I'm focusing on my own skill, and win or lose, it's all up to me. Although wrestling has a team format as far as who wins the match or not, or the meet or not, but it was a one-on-one kind of thing, and that kind of got me interested in the martial arts world in high school, and that was the 80s. And a friend of mine started going to this school, this man named Stephen Fristow, who moved to Memphis, Tennessee, where we lived, and he was teaching Kali, Silat, and Jeet Kune Do. And he had trained with Dan and Asanto, but he'd also traveled and trained with a lot of different instructors, Indonesian and Filipino, and grew up in kind of a tough world. So he studied many different martial arts and very thoroughly. And so after my friend told me about this for a while, I ended up going out there and trying out and fell in love with especially Kali and Silat. But I did a little bit of kickboxing with this instructor and a little kind of taste of the Jeet Kune Do type stuff. And what I would do is, again, I kind of figured I like everything, but I started to focus on the Kali and Silat. And so I would train with him maybe 5 days a week for private lessons, and then go a couple days a week for the regular classes where he'd do a mix of things. And it just kind of took off from there. I was lucky enough that he's such a great instructor. He put me in the mindset of learning how to learn. So not just absorbing all this kind of material, but really how it works, how to put it together, and how you learn not only your own way, but different methods for teaching and developing skills. And so that really inspired me and got the journey going. I moved to Texas soon after I started training with him. So that was 90, 91. I moved to Texas and I started focusing more on Pakiti Tertia. That's where I met Tuhon Erwin Belarda, and he was one of the early guys in the 70s and early 80s in Pakiti Tertia, and just a super guy. So he took me in as a student and kind of took time away from his family. He didn't really want to, but he came out and started teaching, and we wouldn't let him quit. So we kind of would knock on his back door, hey, can we have class tonight? This kind of thing. And so I focused on Pakiti there. And then around 93, my training partner and I got the opportunity to train with Herman Suwanda in Indonesia. We just kind of heard about him and thought, oh, that's pretty cool. It'd be pretty amazing to go there as well. And so we set it up where we could move in for a month with him, just the two of us, and just train all night and day and meditate and do anything we had the opportunity to learn. We wanted to do that. So, we went to Indonesia for that month to train. And again, I got even more hooked. And so over time, I just kind of balanced the Kali, the Silat training, where most of my Silat was in Indonesia. But then I started hosting my instructor, Herman Sawanda, to Texas, together with some other friends of mine up in Dallas. And we'd have seminars with him about 3 times a year. And then I'd travel again to Indonesia 2-3 times a year, sometimes 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that. And train with Tuhon Irwin in the Kali for quite a bit. And in the late 90s, he started to pull out with a lot more commitments with work and family, and had me kind of take over the group. And around the same time, several of us traveled to the Philippines and started training with Grand Tuhon. And so I've just been so lucky with the instructors I've had to send me in the right directions and give me the opportunity to train with the source or some of the top guys in these different arts who just were so generous with me. And so I just, like I said, you're a nerd, I'm a nerd, I'm addicted to martial arts. And I found there's so many great things out there, but I just kept finding my plate was full with what I've been training, and enjoyed going deeper and deeper into it. And again, it just kind of took off, where I would train as much as I could here in Texas, but then go to the Philippines a couple times a year, sometimes 3 times a year, and balance that with Indonesia, and then training with my instructors here in the US. And so I just kind of kept going. And that's really been my focus for the past 20 something years, is doing that. And I dabbled a little bit of jiu-jitsu just for fun. But I think my body is a little bit old, and unfortunately the instructor moved away. So I only got not even really a year's worth, because I was traveling and so busy doing everything from personal travel to work and stuff. And but I had a fun exposure kind of going back. This was just 2-3 years ago, to kind of my wrestling roots, and feeling how much fun that was back then, and to mix something that was a sport now into something that had some application. But anyway, that was really just for the experience, to go in and see what it's like. And I would continue if I had maybe the time, and the instructor was still around. But otherwise, yeah, my focus has moved mostly to the Filipino martial arts. I still do a little Silat, but I've just been so involved in the FMA that, I've got, like I said, my plate full, and I'm just still so excited to learn new things and share what I learned. That's pretty much it for my background.
I do have to correct myself. I did give you the right list. I was reading from the wrong Word document.
Oh, okay.
Because I clicked on, no, I did give you the right one.
Okay.
I want to expand on that first point. Yeah. Your base now art essentially was wrestling in high school. You must have a really cool cardio base, because that is, because I wrestled as well, and it's just incredible, like how tiring that is compared to all arts. I'm talking about compared to all arts.
Well, it's exhausting. You're right. I don't know if I still have that, but or I definitely don't still have that. But back in high school, yeah, we were in Tennessee, and our wrestling room was down in the basement of the gym. And the coach would turn on the heat and get it up to 100 degrees, and we'd have a 3-hour practice. And it was, like I said, in the mornings or in the early afternoon, we'd get out there and we'd do wind sprints, pull tractor tires, do that kind of stuff. And then just the wrestling is hard work. It's got to be explosive, and you got to be young enough where stuff doesn't break, or if it does, it heals real quick. So, right. That was quite a thing, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, plus a little bit of extra outside of the training time to stay in shape. That kind of taught me a lesson.
And that was the era of you idolized Dan Gable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the thing is, just because the methodology of Russia and America is very different. In Russia, they're more drill specific, and they hardly do any hard sparring. While in America, it's like grind every day.
Yes.
So just a different methodology. That's why I appreciate, like, when people say I wrestled in high school or I did some collegiate. That's a whole nother level of fitness, in my opinion, because I've experienced it. So
it's a challenge, and they made it really hard for us. One year they were redoing the gym, so they closed down our space, and we had to share another gym space with our other athletic teams. So we started practice at 5 a.m. And so we do training from 5 to just before 8, so we could shower up, go to class, and then afterwards we'd run our sprints, and like 2 or 3 miles of sprints, sprint the straightaway around the track and walk the rest. and lift weights. And so it taught me getting up at 4 a.m. to get ready for that and watch my diet and all that stuff. It taught me if I want it, I've got to work hard for it. So that was I didn't think about it at the time, but that kind of taught me how motivated you really have to be, at least in that setting, to get to compete, to get to fight, get to get in there and do it.
Right.
But, yeah.
The second question, as you can see from the list, is you have an extensive Silat background. How does it complement FMA? How does it complement FMA for you? I want to expand on that question just a little bit, because you did Silat, you train in Indonesia, and this is a common phrase that people have, even if they train. It doesn't matter if they train here or they train in Indonesia. It's just like, man, I still don't understand it. there's a certain type of, as you know, like the esoteric and occultic is tied into learning Silat.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily want to venture for that, but just like the complication, like in a sense, like before you become like a real true master, it requires so much understanding, like, because it's so confusing to the mind. In many ways, it's kind of like getting a PhD in martial arts, because typically people that seek out Silat or FMA, they are already Billy Badass in whatever system. Like they wrestled, they boxed, they did all these base things, and kind of like FMA and Silat is more kind of like postgraduate work.
Often, yes.
I'm just speaking in generalities, but typically that's how it was in like the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. I'm not talking about now, but typically. Right. So please expand on that, on your Silat background and how it complements your FMA, and talk about, do you get it now after 20 years or so?
Right. Yeah. Well, my experience was mostly learning from Herman Suwanda and then a few other family members, 2 of his sisters and 2 of his brothers. And, for me, it was much more personal than just the martial arts. So that part of it really hit home, where my instructor was kind of like a big brother, an uncle, or however you want to look at it, even kind of a father figure to me. But, the teaching styles of the 2 arts are very different in my exposure to the 2 styles I've done. But a lot of the techniques, a lot of the principles behind it are very, very similar or the same. And I found that learning how to learn from the Filipino martial arts and learning how my instructor put it together in the Indonesian martial arts, I could kind of find out what both of them, or both ends, are trying to meet, where one is more drill focused, where you're developing the skills first. The other one's more technique focused, where you do the technique and later the skills develop with that. So they're very different in that respect. And, I guess it was immersion for me for Silat, because when we went to Indonesia, my training partner and I, the first time, it was an incredible experience. You fly 24 hours. Well, actually, first story is I meet my instructor in the airport a few days before in LA, and I had never met him before, Herman Suwanda, but we kind of talked to his wife on the phone and whatnot, and he walks up to me and goes, "Leslie?" I was like, "Yes, yes." He slaps me across the face right in the middle of the airport. He goes, "Are you ready for Indonesia?" And I was like, I just started laughing. I was like, "I don't know. What do you think?" And so he started laughing, and he was like, "Yeah, that was just a test to see if you're an angry person, what kind of person you are. Before I bring you into my home, I wanted to kind of test you a little bit." And so, okay. So he kind of set the mood there, where we were all just having a good time. But we trained all day. I mean, wake up early and train, and he was teaching us to meditate and do these kind of things. So we did get really deep into it in that first taste to really lay a good foundation of the material. And we took a few days kind of break just to get out, but for the most part, we'd wake up early morning. His mom would cook some rice and eggs, and then we get to work for several hours, and then lunchtime, and we work for several hours, and then his mom would cook dinner, and we'd train and meditate a little bit after that. So we got a full experience with that training, and got the opportunity to meet some of the older masters that our instructor had trained with too. And that was pretty cool, because these guys were freedom fighters. They'd actually fought the Dutch and some of the Japanese.
Right.
In our lifetime. And so I learned several things from that, because I would ask questions from my colleague or Filipino martial arts background about, well, when you had to fight with a knife, what grip did you like? What kind of, and they give me feedback that was very consistent with what I was learning, and validated a lot of what we're doing, saying, "Oh, okay, you actually use some of this more simple stuff, but they were being shot at and cut off bamboo poles and fought with those just to stab with." And it's like, whoa, this is these are people who have done it. You know, these people really fought this way. And so it's incredible stories that really made it more rich experience for me, but also validated, again, a lot of the stuff I see that's in both Silat and FMA that, okay, this man in his 80s right now, he spent his whole life doing martial dance. And he killed a lot of people too. Right? And the dance didn't take away from his skill set to be able to kill all those people, you know, like those forms didn't, you know, I mean, maybe if I had 2 weeks to get ready for battle, it'd be a different story, but these people were amazing and they were true masters or grandmasters, and it was evident in everything they did, you know. And so that experience definitely supercharged me for wanting to go deep in the martial arts and understand the psyche behind it, understand the mechanics, the training aspect, and then also just coming down to, let's make it work, you know, let's have fun, let's enjoy learning, but let's also figure out how to make this stuff work.
Did you see any kind of Jedi stuff? Maybe because, you know, I don't want to put off, you know, your students or whatever. We don't have to talk about the occultic or esoteric side, but we can talk about like some crazy skill sets that you've seen. So tell us about that. Like, well, what are the stuff that are like, wow, like that's just some next level, like, you know, Sixth Sense. I mean, you know, like he hit a quarter, or you know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't know if let me just tell you a story then. There was an old man they called Aki Iyat, which is just grandfather in Sundanese, the language of Western Java. And he taught a lot of people. He was an old man, and he didn't really know his age. The older you are, the more respect you get. So he said he was 99 or something like that. And, he couldn't be cut with blades. And he would pull out this Dutch saber, and he would chop wood with it, you know, hardwood with it, and just kind of chop some up, and then he'd run it through his hands like this, and then he'd show us, right? And he'd let us feel the blade. It's like, oh no, the blade goes from the top to the bottom, and he'd stab the tip in this big piece of hardwood and pick it up, and then pry it off, and then he'd stick that in his neck and just drive it like this and rip it from the inside of his mouth out. And then he'd cut something else, and I was like, this is weird. This is very weird. And he said, oh no, it's, you know, it's from the years of meditation and mantra and stuff like this. And I was like, okay, well, and I'm a very skeptical person, but I'm also willing to believe that there's many things I don't understand. And what I'm being told may not be what's going on, even though whatever's happening seems to be going on. You know, the whatever's behind it, I don't know if I can believe in, but if I see it and feel it, that's pretty crazy. And he said a little blessing, this old man, he said a little blessing, grabbed my arm, and then he started cutting on my arm with this, it's a bolo-like blade, but it was a Dutch shaped saber. And it cut the hairs off my arm and left a long red line, but nothing broke the skin. So I was like, okay, you know, this is interesting. So we would go back and visit him a lot, really just for him to talk, not to teach a lot of Silat. He was kind of old for that. But that got our attention. And at one point, he took his fist. And again, this is an old man that couldn't stand up straight. He could barely, you know, walk. And he would say some blessing, and he'd say, if I hit you with this, you're dead immediately. And we're like, okay, sure, okay. You know, it's like, well, how can you test that? And his house, you know, is kind of Dutch Indonesian style house. It's concrete and cinder blocks and then tile, and it's kind of basic building, square building. And he punched the concrete on the floor, and the whole house shook. I mean, that his little frail hand should have broken, but it didn't. And and we were like, what is going on here? This is some crazy stuff. So we had experiences like that where we'd meet these special people like that could just do stuff we just didn't understand, that how they could be that old and still be, you know, have that kind of energy about them, or have that kind of whatever, I don't want to call it power, but you know, I'm sure I fell for a few tricks, you know. Hey, let's trick this guy, you know. But there were a few that were real kind of interesting, how they devoted their lives to training. They devoted their lives to kind of the spiritual side of it as well, and to see it come together. Where you know, they're kind of like, well, we want to learn to predict the future so that we know when they're going to attack us. It wasn't about, you know, oh, I'm going to save, you know, airplanes from crashing or anything. It was more about, yeah, so we know what the opponent's going to do. So it was an interesting mix of this kind of mental, spiritual, whatever you want to call it, and the physical was very practical, as opposed to just this, hey, we're we're going to see a bunch of crazy lights, and then we'll be wiser. Right.
But
Right.
that's so cool that when he punched the ground, it was like a video game move.
Oh, it was crazy. Yeah. I guess you could call it that. The shells were rattling and shaking. Yeah, pretty much.
So, what other styles like Merpato Putti, they kind of have like sense training. Did you do that? Because obviously every day, like you did like meditation, where you like kind of like so like a I guess this isn't a secret anymore. I guess I can kind of give this away.
Okay.
One of like the trainings back in the old days in the Philippines. I don't know if it was in Indonesia. They get a whetstone, and you go in a room that's kind of soundproof, right? And then you drop like a needle, and you're supposed to pay attention to like either the vibration or the sound of that needle. And over time, you build up your sense, right? Or you stare into a very small candle, like the flame, and you just meditate on that for like hours on end. Were you doing something kind of similar to kind of heighten your senses?
There was something kind of like that where it was meditation, but my instructor kind of filtered from what he learned from that old man, Aki Yada, I was just telling you about, and other sources, to saying, I'm Indonesian, I grew up in Indonesia, and so I believe a lot of things that I experienced in my life that are kind of metaphysical, but then I've been exposed to the West, so I'm also kind of skeptical and want to find where science meets some of this spiritual stuff. And so he translated a lot of stuff down to just belief and breath. And so the exercises we do that he learned from his teachers, there'd be meditation where you're denying yourself breath, or you're controlling your breath as kind of just warming up. And then you'd get into visualizations, and you go for a few weeks of one type of visualization. And it is kind of paying attention, like you close your eyes and all these lights and things kind of swirling around in your inner vision. You try to get control of that. And then once you do, like you calm it down into just one kind of light. And just visualization exercises. But it did take time mentally to be able to kind of reach different stages. And then as a byproduct, we'd start having all those experiences that I think everybody does when they meditate or they do something, where you turn and look at the phone and then it rings, or you're humming a song and then it comes on the radio, or you have a dream and the next day something very, very similar comes true that you never have when you're not doing these kind of exercises.
So there's a lot of, you experience a lot of synchronicity.
Yeah, exactly. And whether it's you're noticing it more just because you're doing this kind of awareness training, or something weird's happening, I don't know. But again, along those lines, had some interesting experiences, positive and negative, with that. Mostly positive overall.
Oh no, sometimes there will be, because it's a summon.
Yeah.
Some of those exercises are summons, essentially. So you have to prepare yourself to fight those dark things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would read in the Indonesian newspaper about the crazy stuff that was going on with these, either the government trying to kill off the kind of spiritual leaders that had these kind of influences and at least had followers, and them fighting and cursing each other back and forth. And it was just kind of weird to pick up the newspaper and read about it. I mean, a real normal newspaper, and say, oh, well, they had 20 spiritual prisoners eat their own excrement to kill their magic. And well, okay. And I just kind of accepted that this is a different mentality, a different reality. And with the whole country, or many, thousands of people believing this, there's some other possibilities there. And so I resign myself to, I won't understand it. I can't understand it, but I can see the product of it. And whether, again, that's all psychological or there's something there, I don't know. But it was pretty fascinating to be a part of that. And it added a lot to my interest in the martial arts. It's like, you can train the body, and then you're dealing with the mind, and maybe the byproduct is religious, at the end, the kind of the outlook on life is what I mean. So yeah.
I have to thank you, because it's such a mind-opening interview, because you gave away one word that it speaks 1,000 volumes to me. You said breath work.
Yeah.
And so kind of like in the Japanese concept of hara, the Chinese dantian, you see Hickson Gracie with his acrobatics with the yogi controlling his diaphragmatic breathing.
Yeah.
How important breath work is to rooting power or strike capability.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much. So I'm going to move on to that, because I want to piss people off.
Yeah, it's weird anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. So shout out to Baste. Felix from Reyes from Texas, Alvin Albano from San Francisco, and Ken Jowers. So people are watching. So your trip to the Philippines to see GT for Grand Tuhon, what does he like most about PTK? I'm talking about you. I'm not talking about him. What do you like most about PTK? And the expansion question after that is, many people say there are two types of systems: the attributes development system and the drill system. So first question, what do you like most about PTK? And then we'll expand on that second one that's tied to it.
I guess what I like most about PTK is there's enough logic and organization in the material that you can grow beyond it, or you can grow to put it together without being constantly guided through it. So in other words, it's very much where if you have the mechanics, you have a good sense of application with a few different tools, you can keep going, you can keep learning, and the more you see, the further along you take it. And you're not creating your own style, but you're seeing how it fits together. Much like, even Grand Tuhon would say, you've got the alphabet with, I guess in English, 26 letters, but how many books have been written in the world? You're still using the logic, you're still using the mechanics and the techniques, but there's enough freedom for you to stay within the logic or the principles of the art and discover so much. Now, the more pieces of the puzzle you have, the easier that is, and the more clear you can stay within those bounds but still explore. But I think that's what I love about it, is after 30 years, I'm still learning new things. I'm still finding out more depth. And I love just having an opportunity with training partners and friends and instructors and students and discovering new things that just make it a more rich experience for the learning process. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's where I still get a lot of enjoyment, where, things keep coming together in a way that reinforces what I learned in the very beginning, but has depth and layers that keep me fascinated with the art even now. And I think ultimately it's the training method behind it, not the techniques or the cool finishes or whatever. It's really how the training fits behind it, and then of course what material has been kind of curated in the art.
Yeah, and even the method of instruction has changed throughout whatever time period that you've learned it at, whether you learned it in like the 80s, 90s, and like the 2000s. So this is a question, and I have to credit Martin for this. Thank you for throwing this out there, Martin, and coming up with most of the questions in this list. Many people say that there are two types of systems: the attributes development systems and the drill systems. So can you comment on that? I'm talking about in context of PTK, obviously.
So I guess, is that saying that some systems you're just repeating lots and lots of drills to develop whatever your ability to apply the art, and others are more on less of a drill structure and more sparring, or more I just want to define what those two different aspects are before I give my opinion. Is that right? Am I saying it right? The drill-based system is you follow these kind of standard drills and you'll learn the art that way. Versus,
I'm guessing that's what Martin meant by that question.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because, well, from me as an outsider looking in, obviously there's like the 60 plus something, method, and then there's the try-V method, right?
Gotcha.
So I guess that's what he means. I mean, unfortunately, he's not here to ask, So
Yeah. I mean, it all has to be together. There has to be structure for you to have a way to learn. I guess I'm speaking as an instructor, is I need to teach with structure so that I can test whether or not what I'm teaching works, rather than just one student's pretty good, the other one's pretty good, but I didn't train them the same way. If I have a structure with drills, I can test and see, after going through many different students, is this drill working? Does it add to their skills? Are they able to perform the techniques and the movements that I'm trying to teach based on those drills? If not, the drills need to be modified, or I'm not teaching the drills correctly. And on the other hand, if the person can't swing the stick more than 20 times in a row, they're not going to be able to, they need to develop the attribute of stamina. They're going to need to develop the sense of, culminating power through their body mechanics. So I use the drills to teach those things. And, if we're talking about just a drills-based system, saying that, the focus is almost entirely on drills, there definitely has to be a balance between a structured drill and something that's less structured, that allows the student to go from what I guess you'd call closed skills to more open skills. Closed skills are like, you're going to hit this golf ball and the golf ball is not going to move. It's going to always sit there at the same time. It's all up to you. Whereas an open skill is you've got to adjust to an opponent, whether it's a football game or soccer game or something like that. It's moving, changing. The environment's constantly changing. You've got to adapt to that. So if you just go in a drill where your feet are always doing the exact same thing and there's never a variable, yeah, it's very limiting. You're not going to fully develop. But if you're, on the other hand, if you're in something that's completely open-ended, you're missing a lot of opportunity to build structure and have a way to, or a method to develop those attributes consistently. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, actually, the question after that, you kind of answered it already. The next question after that was, PTK is clearly a drill-based system, but what's his take on attribute development in the PTK training methodology, and why are drills important? In his opinion, you kind of answered that in your last sentence.
Well, this is what I've seen in the past, because I've very limited exposure to other styles, but I have had friends that have studied it and students that have studied other styles, and occasionally, I'm not very good at social media networking and contact and whatnot, but I hear stuff online sometimes, and people say, oh, those old I guess most of the other styles called sombrata drills, or those kind of two-man partner drills that are scripted, they never help me in sparring. And I think it's, when I hear those kind of things, I think I understand what's going on. Is the drills are not taught in a fashion that allows you to move beyond that or to challenge you, where they're becoming more and more open-ended. For instance, when I first started learning FMA, I working with other partners from other groups and stuff like that, I've noticed that, even beginners do this a lot, is I don't want to hit you, so I'm going to feed you kind of the wrong angle just so there's no accidents. And then you kind of acclimate to a drill where we're being generous to each other and purposefully missing. And then I learned the technique a little too wide or a little too narrow, and it doesn't fit when somebody's really trying to hit me in the head. Or I always do the drill at such a predictable, slow pace, so I'm perfect at it, and never do it where my partner's really, going faster, and maybe we're on the edge of maintaining the quality of our movements. So I really see that a lot, that the drills, maybe it's a lack of access to that type of instruction that carries those drills from something that's a very basic introduction to the movements or the logic of how the techniques interact, or, one attack, counter, recounter, to something that's more towards application. My instructor, Tuhon always said, you've got to take it to application. You can't just do a warm-up or do drills. You've got to get to the final result, which is application. And so that's something that's always stuck with me, that anything I learn, it's just one piece in the progression. There's got to be something that works up to that and something that continues on from it. And so I love the different drills for teaching and learning the logic of how the techniques fit together. But there's a lot of steps between a scripted two-man drill and fighting with the same material and actually having it come out and work for you reflexively, or at least you're planning on setting people up to do that material.
Well, what do you have to say with people who say that FMA isn't good for self-defense since they don't carry weapons with them all the time? Of course, that doesn't apply for people that live in Texas, son.
We all carry weapons all the time. Yes.
And in the Philippines too. You've been in the Philippines.
That's true.
Everybody's packing.
It's
maybe not in Manila, but like you go to like everyone either has like a sidearm or a blade. So
yeah, it's a wonderful place.
Continue, sir.
So well, of course, the easier answer is you're training the weapons to build a lot of the attributes, like the timing, the power, that kind of thing, that apply to your empty hand skills. Or you also say, well, if you don't understand how the weapons work, it's difficult to defend against it. So in other words, if I don't know what a punch is, how am I going to learn how to parry or block it? So if I don't know how a stab really comes in, in a multitude of ways, I'm not really going to have a very good sense of how to defend against it. But the reality is, my students, one of my students used to say, okay, the way my curriculum's set up is Level 1 is for you to beat up or be able to defeat anybody who attacks you that's untrained. And level 2, you're able to defeat all those people that what they learned at level 1. But after that, you're just fighting these esoteric sword masters, wherever they are in the world. And so you're really, with FMA, it's just how you focus on it. If you focus on those basics that apply to self-defense, and that's all you want, then you don't really need to go so deep into the art. A lot of that is just for our enjoyment, and to, get up to say 80% and then eke out those tiny percentages after that, maybe we spend a lot of time just to get a small movement towards being better. But yeah, in reality, it's what you focus on. I teach, law enforcement and military on occasion, and students who just want self-defense and don't want the full FMA. But most of the time, I'm teaching 80% FMA in its most simple form of application. We don't do all the back and forth drills. We do coordination and technique and then stress testing. But it's still the same stabs. It's still the same maneuvers to get out of the way. It's just focused on self-defense. So it depends on what you want. I think many martial arts go way beyond what you need for self-defense, and the FMA does that. And thank God for that. Otherwise, I would have gotten bored and done something else after a while. I've got to have something to support my addiction.
As a side context, in a lot of places in the Philippines, when I talked to like the older masters, they said that in the older, even Spanish times, there really was only 3 strikes. Well, 4 technically, because you have to thrust. But this from the sun, from the al vis, which is when you turn your wrist like this. It could be like that, and then apagatan, which is from the bottom, because that's where you put your clothes, because they didn't have washing machines back then. And so like how you teach the military, do you teach them like that, and then your defense is a box pattern? It's just keep it simple, stupid, KISS?
Well, yeah. I mean, I've heard a similar comment about there being only 3 strikes: left, right, and down the middle, whether that's high, low, or whatever.
That's it.
And it really is as simple as that. Is you need to use techniques that are going to work, even if if it's from your right side, if it's a little high, it's a little low, you can adapt it easily and not have to memorize multiple, more angles than just left, right, and center. It has to be super simple, but it has to be broad enough where it can apply to several different situations like that. So, at the heart of it, you go through all this complicated stuff in the FMA training, but you're doing that only to simplify it in the end to where you go back to saying, well, I had to be exposed to all this variety to then be able to mentally simplify it when I respond to it. And I think, depending on your student base, what they're there for only self-defense, or they want to really get deep into the arts, you have a different approach, and you simplify it sooner when it's someone who just needs to protect themselves and their family and don't need to learn to sword fight.
Right. They're just thinking of coming home. They're not thinking about it in a dueling context, or they're not thinking about it in a tribal warfare context when you're getting attacked en masse necessarily, but they're thinking about engaging the target downrange, how to deploy their primary. That's what you're saying,
right?
Just getting enough breathing space so they can deploy their primary, that kind of thing, or they're trying to get in control of an assailant or something.
That's right. That's right. And, and I don't, of course I carry blades, I carry guns and things like that, but I don't tell everybody else you have to. Right. And there are people who have not even thought about whether or not they can kill someone or hurt someone very badly just to protect themselves. And so a lot of times people who aren't like us, that have been in martial arts and so deep into it, we don't realize how weird our conversations are. When I talk to people, sometimes they have to go home and think about what are they willing to do to protect themselves. And a lot of the techniques will not work for them if they haven't made a commitment to whatever that level is. And so, the question before is, is the FMA good for self-defense? I'm not going to carry weapons around, or, if it's only about weapons, you're not armed. Well, it should be. It should be prepping you for empty hands against weapons, even if you don't carry one, because the bad guys do. And you're dreaming if you think you can, only go to places where bad guys, are only empty-handed. So, there's certainly an issue of how much you devote to a certain type of training. You know, if you're always doing the most complicated double stick stuff, yeah, that's not really going to be the most conducive to self-defense. But if you do mix into your training, hey, I'm unarmed, I couldn't get to my weapon, or I didn't carry one today because my environment doesn't allow it, or I just don't want to carry a weapon. You know, some people, that's just the way they are. And there is plenty of room in the Filipino martial arts for them to learn to protect themselves, but they don't need to go deep into the arts, just kind of like we said before. So
what's the importance of sparring for you?
Sparring is very much an important part of the training process. So although it's fun and exhilarating, it is a laboratory to test your different tactics and techniques as well. And so with both myself and my students, we may have a scope for sparring that encourages certain types of techniques or tactics that we're working on. And then also have just open-ended sparring that's like, okay, well, let's see what happens. But I don't think sparring is just just an experience, just to feel what it's like to be overwhelmed, or just have the fun of going nuts with your techniques. It's part of a training progression that allows you to work your way from a technique being day one, I just learned how to move, do the movement. Day two, I'm learning how to work with my partner. Day three, I'm continuing that progression to develop the attributes. Well, at a certain point, I need to be introduced to a more live environment. And so the sparring is cultivating those skills to bridge you from like those drills we talked about before into applying it. But if it's too open-ended, it's, you kind of never get in the same situation twice. And so it's hard to work on specific things unless there's maybe some intent behind the sparring. So it's not only fun, but it's part of a training progression.
Just gotta acknowledge people that did shout outs to us, Billy Jewell and Lori Calcaterra from Texas. So I think we have a few Texans watching us live right now.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome.
For the Tactical Arts Academy, I guess what Martin is saying is, could he develop on the choice of the 3 core values of his logo? Because you have integrity, mastery, and leadership. So please go over that and how you came up with your sigil and go over that in detail.
Well, before I started my entity as the Tactical Arts Academy, I trained with a group of guys we called the Texas Kali Association. And this was originally a group founded by Erwin Bellarda, and he originally called it the Arnis Texas Association, and we just changed it to the word Kali to be a little more consistent with the other PTK, with Grand Tuhon. And we came up with this focus as we realized what we were about is being people of integrity, but also teach the art with integrity. Don't leave stuff out. Don't change it in a way that is just personal, so that the students can get exposed to the best we can offer. And so it was, again, about integrity in character and integrity in the art. Don't chop it up or don't change it in a way that, again, just serves you and not the students. The mastery is, again, kind of the dual nature. It's mastering yourself, right, which is meeting these challenges, ups and downs, and getting control of yourself by, doing the hard things it takes to get better, whether that's martial arts or other things in life. But it was also our interest in the art is we want to go deep into the art, not just play with it a little bit or entertain ourselves, even though it's fun, we love going deep into it. It was, let's master the art, let's master ourselves. And then leadership was, let's work hard. So we're helping others. Leadership is service. And so we thought, if we work hard enough, we master the art, we try to operate with integrity, then we can help other people that want the same things we want, to learn the art, to get better at the art, to get better, be better people. And so that leadership, we thought, okay, we've got to work harder than the next guy so that we can be a good role model, or at least be good teachers and apostles for the art, to share the art like that, or ambassadors for the art. And so that's really the influence from that Texas Kali Association, and a lot with my personal values as well. And so that's what I carried on and realized that that's part of the identity of tactical arts is those components there.
And Sir Leslie, I don't want you to think that I'm being disrespectful by looking to the side. It's because I'm getting questions from people.
Okay,
So that's why I look like, why is this head turning like this all the time?
Well, and my camera's higher than me, so I'm sorry if I'm yes.
This coming from Bastet, because I guess you were friends back in the day, and you had a lot of contact. For Leslie, send my regards. I can't imitate his voice. I used to take him around Manila whenever he stopped over en route to Bacolod to train with Gahe. That's more than 2 decades ago.
Yeah.
My only question is if he's still with PTK or any PTK group, and what is Tactical Arts Academy, and what arts does he teach now? As I remember, he was heavily influenced by Silat in the 90s, which he showed to me when we were in Subic Bay. So there you go, sir.
Yeah, Baste is an awesome guy. He's a good friend of me in the Philippines, and we've lost touch, but it's awesome to hear from him here. I see he says no more long hair. Yes, as you get older, you lose your hair, and it just kept getting shorter and shorter and ripped out, and so
he moved to the East Coast very recently because he was in San Francisco for a while.
Oh, okay, cool.
And so he's in the East Coast. I think around the time of the Corona pandemic or something.
Gotcha. Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, tactical arts, I mean, the focus for quite a long time has been Pakiti Tertia, FMA. I taught Silat up until just a few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and I just kind of found that fewer students were interested in it. I was training less, and that probably was part of that influence. And I was just spending much more time training Kali, and so I focused on that. I used to run self-defense classes, defensive tactics classes for law enforcement, some small firearms type stuff, just very basic stuff, and then physical conditioning and strength building courses as well. So those are the things I focused on with tactical arts when we had a training facility. I've since closed that and kind of reduced down to more workshops and seminars, but teaching locally, privately, and running a group here without a big facility. So I don't teach as many different classes as I did before. But the idea back then was I realized that, man, these guys are going to be awesome fighting the bad guys, but diabetes might get some of these guys. So let's do a fitness training program so we can be better at Kali and everybody will live longer. And then, as people are like, yeah, of course here in Texas, like people are into guns, it's just more martial arts. Let's bring in some other instructors that are good at this. And I trained up and let's get people involved in that as well. And self-defense was like, well, what are we doing if we're just teaching people entertainment for the Filipino martial arts? We do need to help people that just want to defend themselves and don't want to go deep into the arts. And so those things just kind of developed as a way for us to service the community and through requests of our members, and then through just personal interests where the other instructors and I were like, wow, this is a great training program for getting stronger and hitting harder and feel younger, after doing this. So let's see if the students want to do this. And so that's how things develop with tactical arts.
So in short, what happens? You don't have like a give to all approach. It really is like depending on their needs essentially. Like if a guy is looking like a Michelin man, it's like, how is he going to apply that art? Maybe he needs to lose a little bit of poundage, so you got him do burpees or very cardio intensive workout. And then for the LEO, it's just like, oh, how do you deploy the primary? Those kinds of things, right? How do you heighten the reaction time when it comes to that 21 feet rule? How do you defeat that kind of stuff? And then maybe there's a difference too for women that come there just for a general fitness idea, have a nice body kind of thing. And then you have like a kids program as well. I'm thinking for adult development, right?
Right. Everything's true except I never had a kids program. I guess.
Oh, you don't?
Yeah. I don't know.
I mean, you and me both, because I'm like, how do I train my nephews, and I can't. How do you hold their attention?
Yeah, I guess for me,
they have.
Yeah. I guess for me, a lot of it was just we talk about some serious topics, and I didn't feel comfortable talking to kids without their parents there about, of course, I wouldn't teach a 9-year-old how to stab a bunch of people, but still, a lot of stuff we do is serious business, and I just felt more comfortable with all adult facility, and so that's kind of how I've done that. But you're right in saying that it's all about the needs of the people there, and often, as I'm sure you've seen, when people start doing martial arts, they start learning they realize there's a lot of things in their life that they can now learn that they didn't realize they can do for themselves. And so part of that excitement was people saying, oh, you know, now that I'm doing this martial arts, I want to get in a little better shape, or I want to do this for myself. So it was about encouraging that and giving people the outlet, or, you know, to be able to do that with the same community that they trusted, our other members, our other people in our group. So that's where a lot of that stuff developed. And you're right, everybody has different needs. And that's what we try to do, is at least within our capabilities, to serve those needs.
That's awesome. And then we're kind of winding down. Can you guys send me any more questions that you want to ask Leslie? Because I have a couple more. Why and when did you have the idea to open the Cali Gear online store, which is quite kind of like a hallmark in our community? It's like, because there's about like 4 or 5 kind of, there's this Bunyal brand, there's all these things, right? And then that's the other one that's just kind of like a big name in our community, in the FMA community. So
well, yeah, you know, my first training in the FMA, it was hard to get gear. You know, there was maybe some in the back of Black Belt magazine, some little ad, you could order stuff. At least in the circles I was in, it was very hard to get sticks. It was hard to get, you know, helmets or bags and things like that. There was a company called I&I that used to sell stuff, and there was, I guess, maybe the WECAF organizations had things for sale, but you know, back in the early 90s, it was hard to find that stuff, and we couldn't go online and find it. And so I realized, you know, when I started going to the Philippines, I would bring back stuff for my training partners. And then I thought, well, if I bring a little extra, I could also sell some stuff to fund my trips and then help people get gear. And so in the beginning, it was more about how to help people find gear when, you know, it took us years to find out, well, can we get some Kamagong? You know, where can we get this stuff? And so I just wanted to make it easy for training partners and friends, and then other students and people in the art to get the gear. And it just started building from there. For a while, I was only bringing back antique blades because I was interested in the culture and the history behind it and the education behind it. And of course, you know, how it fits within the arts. And then later I realized, well, you know, sticks and bags and other things were things I wanted to bring back to just for regular training. And eventually I moved out of the antique blades and weapons like that into something that was easier, the things that could just be manufactured, like aluminum blades and things from blacksmiths and nylon bags and that kind of thing. And so I just kept going with that. Now I'm kind of at the tail end where I'm kind of winding it down a little bit to just a few products that work for us, and kind of getting a little bit more mobile lifestyle. But yeah, in the beginning it was all about how I can bring those things back for other people, and also how can I spend 24 hours a day involved in stuff that's Kali, you know, whether it's training or gear or that kind of stuff. So that's where that came from.
Yeah, because the thing is, in our community, it's like century martial arts, combat instruments, sticks, bunyal, and then you. that's kind of like, you know, I mean, there's Kozakowski, right?
Yeah.
And then there's traditional, and then there's a one that is for the mountain region in the Philippines. It's made by like a Igorot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So those are pretty much it. Like that's kind of like the trusted. That's kind of like the Coke and Pepsi brands.
Gotcha.
So you fall in that like top 4, top 5, you know, kind of list.
Well,
so it's cool. Like, oh man, I gotta give my list. Oh, you gonna get Cali Gear, man. Like, you know, I mean, just, you know, because my bag, I get it from it's like an old tennis bag, and then I have like a old where I put like my 80-pound ruck.
Yeah,
it's big enough to put the sticks in.
Gotcha.
And it was just like, oh, I have a surplus bag that I don't use for rucking and hiking anymore. Yeah. I use that for my Cali Gear, you know.
There you go.
So and then these are speed questions. So if you see this in the list, you can't like, oh no, I hesitate. Now you just gotta like pick it quick, right?
Okay.
Favorite weapon?
If it could be 2, maybe a spotty daga.
Okay, and then the weapon you like the least?
Maybe a tomahawk or something like that. That's not really part of our traditional training set.
there's a other FMA systems that you would love to try. You see that instructor or that system, you're like, I want to try that.
Wow, I can't think of names offhand, but there were several other instructors I would have loved to meet and train with a little bit, at least at Illustrissimo and different groups like that. The Angel Cabales, all the kind of old timers would have been pretty amazing to see. John Lacosta, but
so it's kind of like the legends, right?
Yeah.
You could kind of still reach out to like the inheritors of those particular systems.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. But it's the kind of thing. It's like, how do they swing angle one? I want to, I want to hear how this man does it, and what he thinks about training, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Right. Or like, are they more like an impact-based methodology or a blade-based methodology? Sure. That kind of thing, right? Yeah. Other martial arts outside of FMA that you would love to try?
Like I said, I did. It was actually 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. And so it's no-gi jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, Eddie Bravo's, yeah.
Yeah, weird people, but really nice, and I really enjoyed that. And so I guess I did try that and would do more if I had the time, maybe the joints for it now. But that was one that I would continue with. Just jiu-jitsu, everybody talks about it so much, and this one in particular seemed more like Silat to me in the way it was counter, the focus of that. So that was really kind of cool to me. And beyond that, God, I don't know, maybe archery or some other cool stuff like that.
They have a huge presence in the city I live in.
Yeah, I bet.
I live one that's like from just less than 2 miles away, and all the kind of nerdy kids, believe it or not, that's where they go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because later on they fall in love with martial art and they become martial arts nerds.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah. There you go.
And martial art that you would like, I'll pass. you wouldn't try.
Well, I answered this one with Collie Doug. I don't know. Should I say the same one or?
And why do you have to ask these questions? We're going to get in trouble. We're not supposed to be political here.
Yeah, no. I said Turkish wrestling at that one. I didn't really want to try that one. I don't know. Yeah, something else. Gosh. I don't know. I don't really think in the line of negatives so much, but
I don't either. That's why I was like, why is this question here? I'm just giving Martin a hard time because I won't ask that. I tend to think about that in a kind of additive sense as opposed to a negative, subtracting sense. Yeah. One word to describe FMA.
Challenging in a good way. Yeah, that's not one word, but challenging.
Have you got all the Heaven 6 counts down pat now? Are you fully coordinated?
No. I can do some of them though.
how about the
Right. Yeah, I was super good at the forms, the jurus.
The jurus. I mean, even now I have a hard time with the lankas and jurus, man.
Yeah. It's it's hard to remember all that stuff.
It is. And then you also have to remember the geometrical patterns in the bottom.
That's right.
Just try how to apply it, and then where the entries are and where the exits are as well. I mean, it'll take a lifetime.
For me, I guess the way I think is if you put me in context, it comes out. Right? I remember those things. But if we start to do it in the air or something like that, my brain doesn't work very well like that. It's like, I don't know. This is abstract to me right now.
The muscle memory kicks in when your life is in danger for some reason.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah.
One word to describe PTK.
Intriguing. That's kind of a lame word, I guess, but it has kept me fascinated with the art all this time to continue to make discoveries, to put things together that I learned so long ago and didn't quite understand. I continue to just have so much fun with it. So it's whether it's intriguing or stimulating, it's both mentally and physically a good fit for me.
There's so I'm down to like my last 3 things because the third one is you. This is a question I got, and they don't want to give their name. They're asking anonymously. Obviously, you did Silat. That's heavy on the internal side, especially when you go to the deeper levels. Is there any kind of exercise that you could share with us that would be like a good internal exercise to like build our internal strength, or any kind of meditation that you can like kind of give out that you're allowed to anyway? You know what I mean? And not too super confidential. You have to have a Q clearance or something like that. You have to be training for 20 years. You know what I mean? So
That's right.
please, can you provide like a meditative drill and also like an internal drill to build internal strength that you could share if you can?
Well, I'll say one that really resonated with me that's maybe not so much an internal drill, it's more of a mental exercise. But my instructor, Herman Suwanda, used to say, and he learned this from his instructor that I mentioned before, is fight with reality. And the idea is you're going to meet hard times in your life, and you can actually train yourself to handle those hard times by creating your own tests and challenges along the way. So what I mean by this is you have a car wreck, family members die, you lose your job, you can't work, miserable experience. That's an experience that, how could you prepare for that? Well, the idea here is you fight with reality is if you're hungry, you don't eat. If you're sleepy, you don't sleep, right? If your habit is to do one thing, do something else. Constantly change and resist those impulses that kind of take you through the flow of life so that you see options. When you're challenged and life is really hard, like stress, you tend to narrow down and not see any options outside of this really narrow spotlight. And fighting with reality on a regular basis, on a daily basis with the easy stuff will train you that whenever there's something adverse or something that is pushing you one direction, you look for options right away and you make a decision which one instead of just letting the flow take you down that path. And so I found that as an excellent mental exercise on a daily basis, not as a stoic, but as someone looking to strengthen my mental fortitude and my ability to see options instead of just go with instinct or just go with maybe just emotion.
That's really odd how they have come to the same road of conclusion as like Marcus Aurelius' Stoic philosophy. Mm-hmm. The only difference is coming from a Southeast Asian origin point. Essentially, what you're saying is, well, kind of like a note to it is get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and kind of like break up your patterns so that because you're not really training to fight an opponent, you're training for life. It's a very similar attitude to someone that I think now lives from where you were from. I think he lives in Tennessee now.
Okay.
The former SEAL David Goggins. When they're asking like, why do you run like 100 miles and all this, do this nonsense? What at like in your mid 40s? Why are you becoming like a wildland firefighter? They get paid crap. And then he's like, I'm not training to be in a special mission unit anymore. I'm training for life. So when I get that phone call at 3 a.m. saying that my mom died, I don't break down. That's a very heavy concept, because I kind of see that Stoic philosophy in you, like just from like the way that you the way that you move, or I guess the way that you carry across yourself to the public.
I see.
Yeah, it's very rare now to have like most people, not just in FMA, but in a road walk of life, to have kind of like the man in a gray flannel suit, kind of 1950s, 60s kind of style.
Yeah. Okay.
And you're kind of like,
okay.
like I'm saying, like professional,
Okay. Well, thank you.
I don't mean to blow like smoke up your ass. I'm just saying, like, even me, I'm trying to like edit my kind of hoodness. I'm trying to get that away from me and try to refine my habits.
We're all trying to refine ourselves and I like the mental challenge of not allowing myself to just go with what's easy, because again, when it's a hard time, like the story you told of the Navy SEAL, is you will be better prepared to deal with that chaos or that conflict or that pressure or that pain if you've practiced for it. And so whether it's a workout that you're doing that you don't like, or it's food you're eating that doesn't taste good, I mean, you can make different choices. It's up to you what exercises, but you're training yourself every minute of the day, and you can let chance and just whatever happens in your day train you, or you can take charge of that. And that's for physical and mental, and I think that's pretty cool that you have the option of programming yourself as much as possible.
I guess we're gonna end with something silly here, because I'm not getting any more questions from Messenger and my personal device. So I'm gonna ask what Bastet said. When did you give up the long hair? You don't look like the Highlander anymore during the fun times in the 90s. There can be only one.
That's right. That's right. No, I was in Indonesia one year, and my instructor there was using me as a dummy a lot, and I kept getting my hair ripped out. And it was a lot of times it was in his hands, it was around his ankles. It was, it's just like, okay, this is enough. And so I had a little Swiss Army knife with a tiny little pair of scissors. And one of the guys there from Hawaii was like, oh, I was a barber in the Navy. I can help you. I was like, cut it off. And so it was just for training purposes. It was uncomfortable. I was tired of it. It was humid. And I said, all right, let's cut it out. So I started doing that and going the other direction where let's make it short and easy. And it's kind of funny, just people didn't recognize me for a little while, but that's what happened. Yeah, I just cut it off one day.
Well, how does the humidity level in Texas compare to Indonesia?
Where I am, it's definitely more humid in the tropics. But in Houston and some of the other areas of Texas, it is probably comparable or maybe even worse in some places of Texas. But here in Austin, it's the hill country, so the air is fairly dry. It's not too humid very often. But when you get, a month straight of 100 degrees plus, we get the heat, but not quite as bad as the humidity.
And Bastet says, oh, I get it. You had to sacrifice the hair for some love potion in Indonesia.
That's right. I had to burn the hair so nobody could get a hold of it and control me.
The final thing is actually you. Is there any kind of topic that's dear to your heart you want to talk about? Any point about FMA or martial arts in general, or just anyone that you want to give a shout out to? Take the floor, sir. As long as it's not political, we'll get us in trouble, that kind of thing.
What I wanted to talk about. No, I'm so excited to see the direction the Filipino martial arts has taken over the 30 years I've been involved, which to many that's just a short time, but back from it being something that very few people knew, and even many Filipinos didn't know or weren't proud of. It's cool to see it become more prominent, more influential, and see the community that by and large is a lot of great people. I kind of keep to myself, not to stay away from others, but just because I just kind of get my mind set on what I'm doing and don't really reach out as much as I wish I did, and communicate with friends and potential friends in the future. But I think it's pretty awesome to see all the great people promoting the arts, all different styles in the FMA. And I'm so grateful to be a part of that and want to do more if I can to help others on the same journey that I've been on. So it's, my lack of networking or meeting other people in other styles, it's just because maybe I'm kind of quiet, stoic dude, not much personality, but I'm really happy to see where things are going, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to chat with you and comments to others and in a live cast like this. Pretty awesome. But otherwise, I am just so grateful to all my teachers and training partners for making me what I am today. Otherwise, maybe I'd be good at something else, but it'd be something real boring. I don't know, woodworking or something.
I was really interested in that drill question. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this time with you. I hope, at least anyway, to have you back sometime before the end of the year. Because cool. I have other personal questions concerning, like, your training methodology, how you're able to evolve from those, because it's really changed from like the 90s to like 2000 to 2010s, that kind of thing.
I agree. I love that kind of stuff. I love like improving training processes and not holding on to something that's not working. It's changed over the years, but it's also it's not so linear either. Sometimes it's who you're training, right? You use a different method of training, or Grand Tuhon train different people in different ways. And so in the public, a lot of things have kind of progressed, and there's definitely different generations like that. But in many ways, I still train with GT the same way we did when we started, and he kind of figured out what worked for me. And I think other students he teaches, he figures out what works for them. And if he's being secretive, he teaches everybody to be confused. And that's just the way it is. You have to be there long enough to accumulate it or gain his trust. And that's kind of what happens sometimes. But otherwise, I love that kind of stuff. Like, what can I do that's going to make me better? What can I do that's going to make my students better? How do we get there faster but have better quality? So I love those kind of discussions about drills and what the intent is, and how you work from the very beginning to the very end, where you can do it. That's the kind of stuff I geek out on, and that's what makes me a nerd about this. But it's also kind of driven by wanting people to be able to do what I'm teaching them, not just entertain them along the way.
So please, guys, please formulate your questions like that. If you have any question for asking Leslie of his own personal style and how he's able to incorporate his knowledge of Silat and his training in PTK, because I want to have him back on for you know, sometime during like the end of the year or so, in the next like 6 months or so. Because the thing is, like, I geek out on that kind of stuff. You have a very good rep within the FMA community as this kind of stoic dude, and you know, so that's just on me. I am not speaking on behalf of FMA discussion. I'm speaking on behalf of JV. So with that, sir, I have to thank you. If there's any other point that you want to make, the floor is yours. But I'm good.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending a little time with me, and I look forward to next time. Thank you.
And that concludes this particular episode in FMA discussion. With that, I don't know what's up for the next episode because I don't have the schedule list with me right now. But I really thoroughly enjoyed that episode. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe FMA discussion, you know, to people that you know. People, doesn't have to be FMA enthusiasts, but other people that practice martial arts, that they would love that. You need that people that need self-defense, you know, that kind of thing. They might be interested in this. And as a historical context, we're trying to be the archivists of the different FMA systems throughout the planet and their different masters. So with that, so long, and see you, I believe, Sunday.